What's up, everybody? I hope you guys are doing great. Now, this is a special video. Normally, we don't usually react to films and movies and that kind of stuff, but this one was just too hot to ignore. And as you've seen from the title, I'm talking about Adolescence.
What are you looking for? You're making a big mistake. He's only a kid.
Dad, I haven't done anything.
The latest Netflix series that has been having quite a buzz, I think the other day it was #1 most watched series in Kenya. So it's a 4-part series, and the reason it stood out to me, the reason it really gripped me, is because for me, I'm connecting with this thing on 2 levels. #1, as a teacher, as a high school teacher. Actually, this year I've just clocked 10 years teaching. And on the other hand, it caught my attention also as a parent. So I'm going to be reacting to it on those 2 levels. But before we jump on that, comment, share, subscribe. I hope you guys enjoy this video. And I really want to know, if you've watched this thing, what is your take on it? Drop your comment and we can have a conversation. Now, spoilers. If you've not watched this thing, this video has some heavy spoilers. Let's jump into it. #1, before I dive into the theme of this thing, because the theme is mostly about parenting, it's about student life, it's about bullying, it's quite heavy. Before I jump into that, I just want to appreciate the cinematography. I want to appreciate the filmmaking skills that went into this thing. I'm a film fan myself. In fact, just last year, I made a film with some of my students. One of these days, I'm going to release it. Here's the trailer.
What was that? What? Huh? She said something. You're going crazy.
Now, despite how it looks like, it's not a horror film, all right? It's actually a very deep movie. So once the time is right, I'll drop it here and you guys can be able to see some of the things we are doing with the kids out there. This movie was really well made. I liked the script writing. I really loved the cinematography. The whole thing was shot as though it is one take. Like the whole episode, it's a 4-part series, so 4 episodes. And each and every episode was shot as though it is one whole take. Like there was nowhere where I would see the camera cutting from one scene into another scene. It would be one continuous flow. And I think that was a lot of work to pull off, but I also think it was quite genius. Now, Adolescence. This show is raw. It's heavy. Especially the last episode. I remember we were just there with my wife watching this thing and we were like, what? Like it really grips you. It really questions your parenting. Like, do you really know your kid? Do you really know your child? And so basically the whole thing is about a crime happens. There's a kid who is murdered in school and cops burst into this family's home. They take the small boy, the young boy, and they say, you're the one responsible. And even for us, for the audience, we are like, how can this young guy, how can this small boy be responsible for killing a person? Until the stories begin to unfold and you begin to realize, damn, we are dealing with something here. Now, I really resonated with this thing as a teacher because there's a part in the series where they begin to show you student life in person, socially, as well as online, In my 10 years of teaching, I've come to realize that, especially Gen Zs, because, I've been teaching Gen Zs and Alphas. I've been teaching Gen Zs and Alphas. They have a whole social structure going on in how they communicate. A kid can be bullied right in front of your eyes and you wouldn't know it. A group of kids can be bullying some kids and you would have no idea because there's no physical aggression going on. There are no insults, but there's bullying going on. There's just this whole structure that students nowadays have been able to develop. And there's a part whereby there's a cop who goes around school interviewing different students. And the son comes to him and says, hey, manze, I couldn't handle you embarrassing yourself throughout this whole thing because you don't know what to look for, you don't know what to ask for. So the son, who is also a student in that school, had to help him out. out. And I really understood that. I think also the other thing that we need to acknowledge is that kids nowadays are growing up in a completely different world from when we grew up. So their temptations are different. I mean, okay, we are going through the same things, but the magnitude in which they're experiencing it is very different from us. I remember during our time, when you are being bullied, it wasn't a public affair. Like, a bully or two would come to you, they bully you, and after they are done with you, it's just a handful of people who knew that you are being bullied. But nowadays, because of social media and all these things like in a Snapchat and Instagram, you can be bullied and thousands of people are experiencing or are participating or are watching you getting bullied. So the magnitude psychologically is kind of heavier nowadays. I also remember that during our time when I was in high school, we had no social media. All these things, Snapchat, Instagram, all these things came when we were in campus. I think some of them even came after I finished campus. But during the high school season, there was no social media. The closest we had to social media were chat rooms, We had MySpace, there was one called Reporo, there was MiG33, there was High Five. Those are the things that was really close to us. And then also, smartphones were not really widely accessed. So even those chat rooms, most people were accessing them using computers. And how many people had computers that time? Your guess is as good as mine. Not many. So the experience that these kids are having nowadays in terms of bullying and their entire life experience and their social structure is very different. And what I appreciate about this movie is that it's inviting parents to kind of have an idea or an understanding what their kids are really going through. By the way, if you're a parent or if you know a parent who hasn't watched this thing, please tell them to watch it. Watch this thing because it will open your eyes to what your kids are really going through. Because if you don't understand what your kids are going through in this day and age, you'll be trying to apply old school solutions to situations that you have no understanding of. The other thing I would like to throw out there is we need to understand the emotional and psychological stamina of the kids we have nowadays. There was a time I felt like kids nowadays are more psychologically weak, I used to feel like, hey, kids nowadays are so soft. They are so easily offended and blah, 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 blah. And for a long time, I held that opinion. But of late, I've begun to realize maybe they are not. Maybe it's the world, it's the culture, it's the society that they are growing up in. That they're experiencing things that us, we never experienced. Or the way they are responding to these things. Us, we never responded to them. Because even nowadays, let's talk about bullying. Even as adults, we get bullied, especially if you're a content creator such as myself. Sometimes you post content or you say something and people come and comment and you can just look at how someone is commenting and you can tell this person is trying to bully us, But as we are grown up, our prefrontal cortex has already developed, we have the capacity to handle certain things and all that. We have the emotional and psychological stamina to handle some things. But take that kind of experience and put it on a very impressionable teenager who is still trying to understand their identity, who is dealing with a lot of stuff from home. Now take that kind of bullying and put on a child like this. The weight is too much. It's literally too much. So we might feel like these kids are weak, they are soft, but not really. It's just that the magnitude of bullying, or rather the magnitude of negative experiences that they're handling at their time, we probably didn't go through that as well, So I don't want to go so much into trying to give a summary of the series. Just go watch it. Go binge on it and let it soak in. But prepare yourself. It's really raw, especially if you're a parent. It's really raw and you'll get to really have a perspective about the kind of world that your children or your child is growing up in. So these are the 3 ideas or the 3 thoughts that I would like to just throw it in there about some of the most important ways that you can raise your kids. Number 1, the environment matters. There's the home environment, but in this context, I want to talk about the school environment because that's what the Adolescence series is mostly about. The school environment is very, very important. You must be keen about the kind of school you've taken your children. You have to be very involved in the kind of students, or rather the kind of friends and friendships that your child is forming, Do a lot of background check about the kind of school you're taking your kids to and all that. But now here there's a caveat. After you've done your due diligence and you've taken your child to the school with the best environment, here is the thing I've discovered. Idea number 2, pray for your kids. Because this is what I've noticed. No matter how perfect the environment might be, there are some things that you just will not have any control over. And I think as a parent, that's something we need to acknowledge very, very early. Do everything you can about bringing up children, how to raise your child with good manners, good behavior. Do everything you know. But acknowledge that there is a place of limitation you simply have no control over. For example, you've taken your kids to this good school. You've even done your research. You've known it's a good school. There's a good environment and all that. But guess what? There's another parent also who is probably not keen in teaching their children all the good manners and all those things. There's another parent who is probably an absentee parent. They are rarely home. But they're going to bring their children to the same school. In fact, that child will be the deskee, will be the deskmate to your kid. So whatever habits that child is learning, either from the older siblings or from the kids in the estate, they'll come and start teaching your kids. And you see, that's not something you have control over. Because you can't go to school with your child and sit with them in class the whole day, every day. That's unhealthy. You can't even start thinking or doing something like that. But this is just to show you that no matter how much or how hard you work in raising your kids well, there is always a place of limitation that you'll always have. There's always a level of control that you will not always have in all circumstances. And this is the place where you just commit and dedicate your kids to God. And just trust God that He has a good plan for this child and He will preserve and sustain this kid for you. I remember some time back, my son comes home and we're just hanging out, just talking family stuff. And then it starts talking about Squid Game. And I'm like, I'm looking at my wife and I'm like, where did this guy hear about Squid Game from, Because I'm like, the time we were watching Squid Game, these guys were asleep. And you're like, yeah, these guys were snoring in their bedroom. Where did they get to know about Squid Game? So we asked him, hey, who taught you about Squid Game? My friends in school. What do you know about Squid Game? I know that it's a very bloody game. I was like, who even taught you how to say bloody? But that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because us at home, our kids don't watch TV during the week. It's just a culture we are set out for them. They only get to watch TV during the weekends. And even that weekend, it's monitored. There's always an adult around to hear what kind of cartoons or what kind of kids shows they are watching, just to make sure they are not exposed to certain things. But you see, not everybody is raising their kids that way. You can't go to a school or you can't go to another person's house and start dictating them how they should raise their kids so that their kids don't negatively influence you. You can't do that. So you just have to play your part. And then whatever you have no control over, just trust God for that. Oh, and by the way, just to throw a spanner in the works, sometimes the kid with bad manners is not the other kids, it's your kids. Because as parents, we rarely think of our children as the bad ones. It's always, that kid, that child. There's always another kid who is teaching your child bad manners. But sometimes, it's your child who is teaching other children bad manners. So that's just something to throw in there. So don't be so confident that you know your child and all that to the point whereby you kind of just take a back seat. Be proactive. Now, the third idea that I just want to throw out there, about 2 or 3 years ago, we had a school function and, parents also attend these school functions. So I remember I just started having a conversation with this parent. She's a counselor and she also has her children there. So we just started talking about certain things and somehow we started talking about parenting. And she told me something that has never left my mind. That thing, I found it to be very, very insightful and very impactful. She said, we live in a time where people put so much emphasis on quality time. You're in a relationship and, let's spend some quality time. Quality time is everything. It's a love language and all that. But she told me something that I found really fascinating and I've taken it to heart till this day. She said, in as much as there's a place for quality time, when it comes to children need more than quality time. Children need quantity time. Children's brains are not like ours. The psychology of a child is not like us adults. As a grown-up, if I spend a lot of quality time with my wife and then I travel for work or for something for the next 6 months, I'll survive and I'll be okay. But the way children's brains work, with children it is out of sight, out of mind. So you can spend so much quality time with that child, but if you disappear for 2 weeks, that child forgets you. Now, when I say forgets you, it's not that you vanish from their brains. They can still remember you and they know who you are. But that closeness, that attachment that you created with them during that quality time, it no longer has such a heavy impact as it was supposed to have. So with children, it's not enough that we have quality time. With children, quantity time is everything. And by the way, if you think about it, when you're raising children, you don't inculcate a family culture to children by giving them instructions. You don't tell them, do this, do that, do this, do that. Fine, instructions have their place. I'm not saying that it's not. But when it comes to children, instructions are not as potent. What is potent to a child is demonstration. Children copy a lot from their parents by what the parents demonstrate. Actually, Let me just say something small about building a family culture. A culture is a way of doing things. And when it comes to kids, you don't teach a culture, you don't inculcate a culture to a child by giving them instructions. Do this, do that, do this, do that. Kids don't learn that way. Kids learn through demonstration. Fine, instructions have their place, but kids learn more and better by what they see you doing, by what you have demonstrated, not what you have said. There's usually this whole conversation of which culture does your child pick. We talk about the dominant culture. You raise your child in a certain way, and then once they go out into the world, they get influenced by the culture of the world. This is what I think. Kids will always be influenced by the dominant culture. What makes a culture dominant in a child's life is the level of relationship that this child has with the people who are influencing that culture. Culture is best inculcated through relationship. You don't inculcate culture by telling you, do this, I told you to, you inculcate culture through relationship, value systems, mindsets, worldviews, and all these things. These things are best passed in the context of relationship. And that's why for kids, quantity time matters, because you can only demonstrate something through relationship if you're present. Quality time is good. But when it comes to the inculcation of culture, when it comes to training a child and bringing this child up in a certain culture, quantity time is everything. You cannot put away the place of relationship and being present. So if the culture in the house is the most dominant, that is the culture that is most likely to influence the child. If the dominant culture is the culture in the world, that means that that child has a closer relationship with his peers or with the influences in the world than they do at home. That's why it's easy for them to follow what their friends and their schoolmates are doing rather than to follow what the parents are doing. Because the relationship with their peers is stronger than the relationship with their parents or family members. I like how Jesus speaks. So this is John chapter 5, 19 to 20. Verily, truly, I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing. Because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. For the Father loves the Son. Now this is talking about relationship. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all he does. For I do what I see my Father doing. Think about that for a minute. Now remember what we said culture is. Culture is a way of doing things. So Christ is simply saying, my culture is established and sustained by my relationship with my Father. The reason it was so easy for Christ to do or to walk in the culture of the Father is because he had a relationship with the Father. And that's a very good demonstration that we see with parenting and children. I do what I see my Father doing. In other words, the culture of my Father is in me. Why? Because I see him doing it. I'm in a relationship with him, and that relationship allows me to observe him and see the things that he's doing. And because I observe and I see the things he has demonstrated to me, it is easy for me to follow suit. And that's exactly how kids operate with their parents. They do what they see their father doing. I remember there's a time I used to come home and, my kids had this habit of they'll just enter the house and they throw their Crocs anywhere, they throw their slippers anywhere, they walk with them in the carpet. And I started telling them, hey guys, you cannot be doing this. When you come to the house from school or from wherever, place your shoes here. And I repeated that thing for so many times, but it's like it was entering from one side and leaving the other side. So what I started to do is that I started timing them. Every time they enter the house, I enter the house with them. And then I do it so strategically that as I enter into the house, they see me removing my shoes and placing them where they're supposed to be. I did that so many times. And guess what? They started doing what they were seeing me doing. In fact, it became so... They got so into it such that sometimes when I forget, they'll be the one who will be telling me, hey, daddy, you have put your shoes in the wrong place. Bring them here, And that's what we really want with our kids. But guess what? You cannot teach that. You cannot inculcate that. You cannot lay out a culture for the home if you are not present, because they need to see the culture in effect in you. They need to see you effecting and demonstrating that culture before they can adopt it as their own. So it is not enough for us to give instructions. You have to be present. Now, I know some of you are listening to this and you're like, what is Curtis trying to say? I understand we are living in strange times, and you gotta do what you gotta do to bring home the bacon, Some of you travel for weeks and months just to go make money so that your family can be supported and all that. And I'm not here to blame you. I'm not here to judge you. Those are the cards that life has dealt you. It's not in my place to tell you how you should run your home. However, something has to give. Studies have shown that kids who see their parents around most often tend to fare well. Not just in academics, but even in other areas of life. That kids who felt like their parents were mostly absent. This is not a place to make you feel bad about your life choices or whatever. This is just a place for you to think about some of these things. This is a challenge for you to come up with a system or a structure that, in as much as you have to be away for a certain period of time, what is that system or structure that you'll come up with that you'll not compromise so much of your presence, which your kids really need for the sake of making a living, you know? If you've not watched Adolescence, please go watch. I really want to know your feedback on the comment section. If you're a teacher, let me know. Are these some of the things that you're seeing with your students? If you're a parent, let me know. Are these some things that you're seeing with your kids? Or what are your expectations when your kids finally become? Just say something. Cheers.